Hey guys, welcome back to Introduction to Node.js, Express.js, and MongoDB. My name is Kaustubh Gharge, but you can call me KG. And in this session, I'm going to be covering Project 2 of this course. Before we begin, let's look at the session outline. So in the session outline, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to cover a recap of previous project, and later on, we will discuss what a user authentication system is and how we may proceed on how to build a user authentication system. So in the previous project, we covered how to create basic REST API endpoints and connect the application, the Node application, to the MongoDB, and add in the personnel records for our accounting department. We were adding the records as well as updating those records. Okay, so we did the create and read. So it's your task to add the additional functionality like updating of the records as well as deletion of the records. So that way you will have a complete CRUD application. Now moving on to this project, we are going to be covering user authentication system. So what is a user authentication system? You may have actually used this yourself. It is a way to get access to the products and services that you want to use. So for example, if you regularly use Amazon.com to get your products, you have a username and password. That is a user authentication system that Amazon has built to protect the identity of its customers and to keep a track of their orders. Okay, so you enter in some credentials and then you can access your account. Same way, it has been used on various products and services. Some of the products and services require you to have multi-factor authentication, like banks. In case of banks, you will always have a multi-factor authentication. Like for example, if you enter username and password, they will again send you an SMS, or you will have an authenticator app where you need to enter in your code. So that is a bit advanced level of security that they provide. But for today's project, we are going to be focusing on the very simplest version, that is using the email and password. Okay, some of the companies use username as well. Usernames are unique IDs that they maintain in their system. We are not going to be covering those, but it is I strongly urge you actually that you create unique IDs in your database, in your Mongoose database, and you check against that. You can use the same principles that we are using in this project, and you can expand on top of it by using unique IDs as well as multi-factor authentication. Okay, so let's move on to the requirements of the project. So the first thing is you must have the Node.js and the MongoDB Atlas installed. Okay, so MongoDB Atlas has to be set up, not installed. You need to have Node.js installed. If you want to use, you can use Node Version Manager to handle multiple versions of Node, and you need to have a code editor like Visual Studio Code or Sublime Text. Okay, so the scope of the project, like I mentioned before, is very simple. We are allowing users to sign up and log in using simple email and password. Again, it is my recommendation that you build on top of this and build it into a more complex application. So the source code of this project is available on my GitHub. You can download it, you can use it, you can even expand on top of it. I'm completely fine with it. If you want, you can just send me a pull request and I will check what you have done. All right, so this is the project overview. If you notice the first 3 points, we already followed the same steps for the previous project, and we're going to be following the same steps for this project as well. Starting from point 4, 5, and 6, we'll be covering user authentication system in detail. So let's begin the project. I'll be moving on to the coding side of this session, and we will get back to the PowerPoint slides in just a bit. So I'll begin by creating a new folder, and I'm going to call this as project 2, and I'll be opening this up in Visual Studio Code. Alright, and I'm going to be opening up a new terminal instance. Okay, looks like the Visual Studio Code got updated. Alright, in here we're going to be initializing the project. Do you remember the command to initialize the project? It is npm init. So I'll say npm init, and I'm going to be accepting the default value, so I'll just say flag y. Okay, it says invalid. Okay, so I cannot give this name. All right, so let me just say npm init project 2. This naming convention is fine. All right, so if I look now, I will have a package.json file created. Perfect. Now let's install the dependencies. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is we are going to be installing Express, Mongoose, bcrypt, body parser, course, and .env. I'll explain all of these libraries in detail as we start coding, but let me go ahead and quickly install this. Make sure you install this at this moment itself. So I'll just say npm install -- save and the dependencies. So I'll say Express, Mongoose, course, body parser, and bcrypt. Let this install, and in the meanwhile, what I need to do is okay, it's done. That's perfect. I need to create a main file that will run. So I'll just call this server.js, and inside of this, we'll start by declaring the variables for all of these dependencies that we just installed. So the first thing is obviously the Express instance. I'll say require, and I'm going to be doing the same thing for the course, the body parser, the Mongoose. So I'll say and Mongoose. We have one for body parser as well. All right, perfect. Now let's establish the MongoDB connection first before we do anything, because that's more important, right? So let's now here in this case, I'm going to be connecting to the MongoDB using Mongoose. Mongoose is a library that allows us to create models for the database. Okay, so we're going to be diving deep into this library as we start coding, but let me just quickly go ahead and make a connection. So to make a connection, all you have to do is follow this following way. So first thing is you do mongoose.connect and you pass in the URL, and then you pass in the parameters that you want to pass in. So I'm going to just passing in the URL. So I'll just say mongoose.connect. Here I will have the MongoDB URL, and the URL I'll be passing in the parameters to make sure that MongoDB accepts the new URL, right? So I'll just say URL, new URL parser as true. All right, I'm going to save this, and after this we have to initialize the Express. So let's do that real quick. I'll say constant app equals Express. So I created an instance, and let's make sure we use the body parser. So we'll say app.use, and we'll say body parser.json. It's the same as what we did last time. And here I will just say URL encoded as well, right? And here we pass in an object of extended true. All right, perfect. Now let me write up the code for the server. So I'll say constant server equals app.listen, and in here I'm going to be passing in 3000 callback function. Say listening on port 3000. All right, perfect. Oops. All right. Now this will throw an error because we don't have a URL, but I'm just going to make sure I add the URL and run this. And let me do that real quick. All right, so I added the MongoDB URL here. And now let's go ahead and run this code and see if this works. So I'm going to select new terminal and I'm going to run this application. Node.js, and it says listening on port 3000. So the server is running. You can ignore this warning. This is from the Mongo client. It's not urgent right now, so you won't be addressing it. It's a deprecation warning for some of the libraries or some of the ways that they handle the connections. Okay, so this works. So now let's quickly review this code on what is happening here. Okay, so the first of all is we have added the Express instance. We already covered this in the previous session. We also covered the body parser in the previous session. The two new things in this particular file are the course as well as mongoose. Okay, so we haven't made use of course yet. Course is actually cross-origin resource sharing. It is a mechanism that allows restricted resources on a web page to be requested from another domain. That is outside of that domain from where it was first served. Okay, so we'll be talking about this in just a moment. But mongoose. So mongoose is a ODM. That's the modeling library that we use to create database for MongoDB. So it provides a schema-based solution to model our application data. It has some pre-built functionality like validation, building queries, building logic hooks. So it is quite simple to work with MongoDB using this mongoose library. And we'll also be using this to create the model, like I said. So let's go ahead and create this model. So what I will do is I will create a folder here, say models. Oops. And in here, I'm going to create a file called user.js. Okay. Now in here, the first thing we need to do is we need to declare mongoose again. So I'll say constant mongoose equals require. All right. Now the user schema is we get a schema method that allows us to pass in a object that is defined as a user, that is defined as a schema. Okay, so let me quickly write this up and then explain it to you. So I'll say constant user schema equals mongoose.schema, and inside here we'll pass in an object. Okay, so the two things that we need to define this particular user is email and password. You can add a username, you can add first name, last name, telephone number, and all those sorts of things. But for authentication, we are only concerned with username or the email and the password. Okay, so I'm going to be just adding username and password. So I will say email, that will be an object. This will be of type string, and we want email to be completely lowercase. We don't want any of the characters in uppercase. Okay, so I'll say lowercase equals true. Then we want this to be unique. So if somebody enters the same URL again, we will tell them that you already have an account with us. Please sign in instead of signing up, so that we don't have multiple records that we again, we don't have to deal with multiple records. This is required. Both of these are actually required, so we'll say required as true, and we can give in a method. We can say can't be blank. All right. Then we'll say, is this the index? Yeah, we want this to be the index for the index for searching. We'll say true. All right, perfect. Now we'll declare for password. So we'll have another object for password. This will again be a type of string. Required, yes, definitely. We'll say true. Cannot, we'll say can't be blank. All right, and we'll have a minimum length for the password. Usually password has a password policy of its own. You can define a password policy as you like, but I'm going to just say minimum length is of 6, and that's it. All right, perfect. And now what we want to do is we want to export the schema. So the way we export the schema is this is a module in itself. So we'll use module.exports, and then we'll export this this as a MongoDB model. Okay, so export this as a mongoose model. So what we'll say is, we'll say module.exports equals mongoose.model, and in here we need to pass in the name, what name we want to use it outside of this particular file, this model. What will be the name of this model? It will be user, and we'll be passing in the schema. We'll say user schema. All right, perfect. Take a note of this, we haven't added any sort of data validation. We are not storing password, we're not encrypting the password just yet. We have added the bcrypt library that will allow us to encrypt the password, but we're going to test this first of all to see if it works. Once it works, then we can work on encrypting the password and making sure that the password exists or not, comparing the existing password. All right, so let's now go back to the servers.js file, and in here what I will do is I will create a new user. Okay, so the user sign up. So let's quickly write a endpoint for user sign up. We'll say app post, and we'll say v1/user. The reason I'm adding this v1 is because we want this to be version 1. As we add more stuff to it, we can change the versions. Okay, so this can be a versioning policy. Make sure what functionality was provided in version 1, what functionality was provided in version 2, and so on. Okay, so I'll just say user sign up. All right, now we'll again have request and response like we did. Now in here, I need to create an instance of a user. Okay, so first of all, what we need to do is we need to import the model that we just created in this models folder that was named user. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll get this. So we'll say constant user equals require, and since this is in the local directory, I'm going to use the relative path. So I'll just say period. That's the home directory. Inside of this, go into models. So it popped up, the option showed up, the Visual Studio Code gave me options, so we'll go into the models, and we need the user file. Right, perfect. We'll save this, and now we need to create an instance for this user, and that's what I'm going to do here inside of this method. Okay, so I'll say constant user equals a new user. Okay, and inside of this, what are the two things that are required? Email and password, right? That's what we have defined. So in here, we'll create an object. We'll say email, and now we're getting this from request and response, right? So we'll be getting this within request. So I will say request.body.email, and the same for password. All right, perfect. Now in MongoDB we had the same method, same way for this particular for Mongoose as well. We have the same method, so I'll just say save, and it will either respond using error or a response. So I'll say error or response. All right, so again, like always, let's handle the error first. If it's an error, then we'll respond using response.status as 400, and we'll send the error as it is. And if it's not the error, then we'll say response.status as 200 and send the response. All right, let's save this. Oh, I misspelled this. Okay. All right, save this real quick. And now, how do we run this? Okay, so in the previous application, we used a command line utility called curl to test our user endpoints, our API endpoints. But in this case, this is a bit more complicated. As we build on the system, we'll add more code, we'll add more endpoints, and these parameters will increase. Okay, so consider this. Right now, you're just sending email and password. What if you were actually collecting the username, the user first name, last name, the address, and all the other details, right? So it will be harder for using curl to send all this information. What we can do is we can use a tool called Postman,